tensions between Canada and the United States continue to rise. Washington's harsh tariffs, Ottawa's retaliation regarding the Alaska crossing, and a new front in the historic trade tensions between the two neighbors. Canada has recently focused on Alaska, arguing that it cannot survive without it. Allegations that the leader of British Columbia plans to impose tariffs on U.S. trucks crossing the border into Alaska have become a serious concern in Washington. The British Columbia government reportedly plans to impose additional route fees or tolls on American trucks traveling to Alaska. Alaska's highway connection to the interior of the United States runs mostly through Canadian territory. A slowdown in this traffic could result in huge losses for the United States. Experts believe that this move is a response to the Trump administration's recent tariffs on Canada. There have been trade fights over automotive and agricultural products before, but rarely over something as sensitive as the Alaska route. Now we take a deeper look at what is happening on the Trump regime side. After Canada cuts the U.S. off in Alaska, we will assess how the trade crisis could lead to more remarkable events beyond the critical situation in Alaska. But first, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and give us a like to stay up to date with our content. Let's get started without wasting any time. Canada's attempts to charge the United States tolls in Alaska, Trump's 25% tariffs, and British Columbia's plan to impose additional costs on trade with Alaska have shattered any prospects of improving relations between the two countries. In the wake of Canada's move, Alaskan officials tried to eliminate cruise ships from stopping in British Columbia in support of the United States. They even introduced a bill to this effect. Apparently, Canada's desire to restrict U.S. access to Alaska has upset the Trump regime. Alaska has once again asked for the repeal of a 139-year-old law that prohibits U.S. cruise ships from docking in successive American ports. Dan Sullivan, a Republican representing Alaska in the U.S. Senate, said that he did not recognize the prime ministers of different states, but that it was a bit of a dangerous game before expressing his desire to repeal the Passenger Vessel Services Act, either through the Senate or by Trump's executive order. Under the law, foreign-built ships are not allowed to carry passengers between two U.S. ports without a stopover in a foreign country. The law aims to protect U.S. shipping interests, similar to the Jones Act, which applies the same rules to cargo ships. Many Alaska-bound cruise ships stop in British Columbia, particularly in Vancouver, but also in Nanaimo, Victoria, and Prince Rupert, generating significant tourism revenue for the provincial economy. Mr. Sullivan argued that this rule was made while COVID-19 restrictions were in place and that he would like to see it repealed. Mr. Sullivan told Canada that he would not want to deal with Alaska and that if it did, they would work hard to get cruise ships to bypass Canada's ports. British Columbia Premier David Eby said there are currently no plans to impose tolls, but they would like to have the authority to do so if Trump escalates his actions against Canada. Trump has recently said in strong terms that he would reconsider the Nord Stream pipeline and oil shipments if Canada took such a step. The United States is Canada's largest trading partner, but it is worth noting that Canada has a significant advantage over the United States, especially in Alaska transit. Issues such as free trade zones and transit rights have long been negotiated. Still, British Columbia's threat to impose tariffs on U.S. trucks could create tensions that could lead to the cancellation of contracts. Alaska, on the other hand, is of strategic importance as a separate part of the territory of the United States. It has rich oil deposits and fishing grounds. Moreover, in the defense strategy of the United States, Alaska is an important base on the Pacific route. Critical military infrastructure, from nuclear submarines to air bases, is located around Alaska. It is possible to reach Alaska by sea, but for a supply chain accustomed to the speed of the highway, this could impose very different costs. With this in mind, Canada's potential tariffs could affect not only civilian trucks, but also the military's supply routes. This could become a serious national security issue for the United States. Returning to the British Columbia leader's statement, the move is seen as a response to Trump's threat to impose tariffs on Canadian agricultural products and oil. There were messages from the Vancouver government that this move had been on the agenda for a long time, but the details are not so clear. It is not clear whether U.S. trucks or all international license plates carrying commercial goods will be targeted or whether there will be certain privileges. This uncertainty may not be limited to the economy. In the U.S., Trump's opponents may criticize the president for leaving both Canada and Alaska in the lurch. Alaska's Republican lawmakers could put pressure on Washington, saying that if we don't reach an agreement with Canada, we jeopardize Alaska's future. Alaska is a strategic stronghold for the United States at the northern tip of the continent. It is an important source of income in terms of energy resources, fishing, and mining. Alaska is also important for tourism. Alaskan cruise ships and tourists coming to the region by land have to pass through Canada. Canadian taxes could seriously affect this sector as well. A possible tourism crisis could deal a heavy blow to Alaska's economy. All these events shed light on the question of how two close neighbors could be dragged into such a violent trade dispute recently. The Trump administration has frequently resorted to protectionist measures against Canada. It has imposed tariffs on auto parts, steel, and aluminum, to which Canada has responded. Disputes over oil and gas have been exacerbated by U.S. threats of trade sanctions. Now the Alaska issue adds another dimension to these tensions. Another sensitivity about Alaska is the existence of the highway network known as the Alcan Highway. This road was built during the Second World War to connect Alaska to Canada. It remains critical for logistics today. Could closing it or slowing it down with heavy taxes cripple the northern corridor of the United States? Some say it would not be that big a crisis, with both countries ultimately trying to protect their common interests. But it is unclear how much concessions the Trump administration will make in the bargain. The Canadian side could put demands on the table, such as the U.S. dropping sanctions or lowering tariffs. If no deal is reached, British Columbia could impose tariffs. Then American trucks traveling to Alaska would start paying huge bills at the border crossing. This would provoke a backlash from both shippers and traders. On the other hand, oil or fish products from inside Alaska are often shipped to other U.S. states. If all these shipments incur additional costs when passing through Canada, this could be reflected in consumer prices. Imagine if Alaska's famous seafood used Canadian roads to reach Seattle or Portland. If every truck, every lorry pays taxes to Canada, that cost will eventually be passed on to the American consumer. Perhaps the Trump administration will bow to pressure from Alaska and signal a détente with Canada. In the U.S., the opposite view prevails. The U.S. press says that this step will also be to Canada's detriment. Restricting a route with an annual trade volume of billions of dollars would also hit their economy. This is because vehicles traveling from the U.S. to Alaska also spend within Canada using roads, accommodation, and other elements that contribute to the local economy. Some analysts warn that if Canada actually implements this in Alaska, there could be a sharp retaliation from Washington, and even an escalation of military tensions in the north. All eyes are now on talks between Washington and Ottawa. Although the Trump administration is known for its tough rhetoric, it has never underestimated the importance of Alaska. White House officials trying to intimidate Canada may be in for a big surprise with the reality of Alaska. If the U.S. has problems in Alaska, it means that the military strategy there is also at risk. Because the Arctic is becoming a place of strategic competition, melting ice and larger shipping lanes are creating more access to the region than ever before. Normally, the northern region attracts a lot of attention from some sides, although the vast majority of the Arctic is under the jurisdiction of sovereign states. The Chinese side seeks to promote the Arctic region as a global commons in order to turn northern governance in its favor. But this watchful eye, harsh conditions for upgrades, and the Arctic's unique location make it difficult to maintain equipment and infrastructure. Of course, the U.S. presence in the Arctic, especially in Alaska, is also one of the biggest obstacles for Russia and China. The U.S. side does not want to see either state's naval presence or fighter jets in the region. In order to increase space awareness in the region, the strategy includes the Pentagon investing in new technologies such as updated radars, new satellites, and better communication networks. It also states that the Pentagon will maintain its current investments in manned and unmanned ISR platforms for the Arctic and conduct an analysis of requirements for future unmanned platforms to prepare for responding to a crisis in the Arctic. The Pentagon wants to continue to conduct regular exercises and develop regional expertise. Russia regularly sends military aircraft near Alaska. Taking all these details into account, any U.S. conflict with Canada and Alaska would likely play into the hands of Russia and China. Even though the U.S. and Canada were outside sovereign airspace, Russian fighter jets were entering the air defense identification zones of both countries. Bombers from Russia and China, which have formed a quasi-alliance, have carried out a total of 9 missions since 2019, the last of which took place last November in the western Pacific Ocean. These activities near the ADIZ prompted the United States to take action. The ADIZ, or Air Defense Identification Zone, is international airspace that requires identification of all aircraft, and the U.S. felt obliged to do something about it. Last summer, while conducting a joint air strategic patrol with Russian counterparts, NORAD detected Chinese strategic bombers for the first time in the Alaskan ADIZ. NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, is a unified American and Canadian military command that provides aviation warning, aviation control, and maritime warning to North America, including the detection, verification, and warning of attacks by aircraft, missiles, or spacecraft. It acts as a blockade of Russian and Chinese fighter jets, especially near Alaska. However, both Russian and Chinese fighter jets have continued their disruptive flights in the direction of Alaska. Despite NORAD's presence, NORAD has recently achieved a historic success in blocking Russian and Chinese fighter jets in the Arctic. It was a lesson for both countries, both of which plan to dominate the region. For U.S. President Donald Trump, this has been an incredibly empowering exercise in the Arctic, especially at this critical time. The North American Aerospace Defense Command, or NORAD, has released footage of fighter jets improving their ability to intercept Russian and Chinese bombers over Alaska. The Alaska NORAD Region and Alaska Command recently announced that U.S. and Canadian aircraft intercepted a U.S. Air Force B-1B bomber over Alaska. This demonstrated the readiness of the United States and Canada to defend North America and respond to global security threats. Black and white footage showed an F-16 fighter jet flying alongside a B-1B bomber. According to the Royal Canadian Air Force, the exercise took place on March 5 and involved Canadian CF-18 and US F-16 fighter jets. NORAD said the intercepted bomber was transiting through the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command's area of responsibility. This critical exercise was a clear message of intimidation to Russia and China. In addition to this exercise, NORAD has also recently carried out important activities in the region. In January, B-1B bombers were sent to Guam, the westernmost U.S. territory in the western Pacific Ocean, for a bomber task force mission. It was unclear whether the bombers participating in the NORAD exercise returned to their home base in South Dakota. According to NORAD, the exercise was part of an operation known as Noble Defender, which demonstrates how North America can be protected from any approach by instantly scrambling aircraft from dispersed locations. The last time NORAD detected Russian military aircraft in the Alaskan ADIZ prior to training activities for Russian and Chinese fighter jets was on February 19. These surveillance activities revealed that Russian activity was occurring on a regular basis and demonstrated NORAD's ability to act immediately in the event of a threat. NORAD has built a layered defense network of satellites, radars, and fighter jets to detect and track aircraft and communicate appropriate actions. The command expressed its readiness to use a range of response options in the defense of North America. The North American Aerospace Defense Command said in a statement that the Operation Noble Defender iteration demonstrates that it is ready, positioned, and well prepared to engage with other combatant commands to deter threats and defend common interests. Regular exercises with Air Force assets such as U.S. Indo-Pacific Command's Northern Edge, Northern Command's Noble Defender, and European Command's Arctic Challenge are crucial. Operations such as supporting the NATO air policing mission in Iceland and providing airlift and refueling capabilities for U.S. and associated allied and partner aircraft in the Arctic are also ways to build this expertise. Air Force leaders have previously emphasized the importance of enhanced training in the Arctic. In 2023, Lieutenant General David S. Nahum, head of Alaska Command, addressed this issue during the AFA's Air, Space, and Cyber Conference. It is therefore not a surprise that the U.S. is conducting such exercises and security activities in the Arctic. Beyond exercises in the region, perhaps the Air Force's most unique Arctic capability is its LC-130, equipped with skis to land on the ice. But beyond the LC-130, the Air Force has a strong presence near the Arctic with F-16 and F-35 fighters, KC-135 tanker aircraft, and HH-60 helicopters at Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska. And the Pentagon strategy specifically states that the presence of fighter jets will continue to increase. By the 2030s, the United States and its Arctic allies will operate more than 250 advanced multi-role fighter aircraft that can be deployed for Arctic operations, according to the document published by the U.S. Department of Defense. According to the document, the majority of Arctic allies will have the F-35. So as you can see, Alaska and its surroundings are incredibly important for the U.S., both economically and militarily. If Canada blocks the U.S. from transit in Alaska and continues to use Alaska as leverage through diplomatic channels, the Trump regime may feel the effects of this militarily as well. In short, Alaska could become Trump's worst nightmare over time. What do you think? Share your comments with us, subscribe to the channel, and do not forget to hit the like button. Thank you for watching.